My hubby told his new girlfriend I was out of the picture. Then I bought the house she was living in. I was scrolling property apps on my phone when I froze. There it was, a glossy photo of a house I had helped imagine with my own hands. The listing showed my husband's new house, but the owner's name read Clara Monroe. The caption below said, "Our forever home." My stomach fell. He had told everyone I was out of the picture. He had said I was the past. I sat very still in my kitchen, and the room seemed suddenly loud. I tapped the photos again like they might change. The pool glinted in the sun, and the fountain I had sketched years ago sparkled in the background. My hands shook. I felt like someone had stolen my chest. A sudden cold steadied me. I thought of the years I had given him, the money I had trusted him with, the plans we had made. I put my phone down and called him. He answered casual. "Didn't think you'd care. You're out of the picture now." I whispered, "We'll see about that." If you want more, hit subscribe for more true revenge stories. I called again and listened to the last words sink into me. He sounded pleased, as if he had closed a deal. That phrase, "out of the picture," landed like a slap and then a spark. I felt small and furious at once. I did not cry. I made a list in my head. First, who knew? Second, when did it start? Third, what could be used against them? I paced. My mind moved fast like it always had when a project needed saving. Through texts with mutual friends, I learned Clara had been in his life a year before he left. They said she was quiet, pretty, and patient. I remembered seeing her at a gallery opening months ago, smiling at him as if she already owned his attention. My anger simmered and turned into a cold plan. Betrayal had a smell I now knew well. I would not make loud threats. I would move in silence, like a woman who had done the hard work and learned how to wait. I remembered our marriage in pieces like photographs falling from a box. I had been faithful and older and willing to work until my hands ached. I had given him my inheritance after my mother died, not because I was foolish, but because I believed in our shared dream. He had used that as seed money to grow his real estate business. I helped with paperwork, answered calls at odd hours, and drove to sites when my knee allowed. We built homes and a life together. I had sat through meetings and signed leases. In quiet nights, I pictured grandchildren and slow mornings together. I had never imagined betrayal. The years of loyalty were heavy now, and they did not protect me from being erased. But memory also gave me truth. I knew where money flowed, what papers he kept, and the one signature he always needed for me fast. That knowledge was a thin, bright blade in the dark. I tucked it into my pocket and breathed. At a charity gala, he came with Clara on his arm. Lights flashed, and I felt heat rush to my face as photographers angled their lenses. He introduced her with a grin I used to know. "This is Clara, my future wife." My knees almost failed. The room blurred around me. People clapped, and I forced my smile like skin over a wound. I left early and sat in my car until the stars froze me still. I wanted to scream and not be heard. Instead, I watched myself in the mirror and set my face to something sharper. I thought of the years I had paid for his suits, the lunches, the small gifts that stitched the fabric of our life. His casual cruelty had been public now. I felt shame for a moment, then it turned. Shame could not hold me. The anger shaped into a clear, careful thing. I would not let this be the end of my story. That night I sat alone in the lamplight and wrote down everything I remembered. I wrote dates, places, bank names, and his tells. I made a map of our life and then circled the weak points where his new life touched our old one. My lawyer friend explained on the phone that he had shifted assets to Clara's name and called it a gift. She said men did strange things to hide money from alimony. She also said that gifts signed under pressure or with forged papers could be challenged. My hands trembled when she said the word forgery. I thought of the loan paperwork I had signed months ago for a property that never appeared on our books. I had signed it trusting him to file and to manage. If he had used my signature without full disclosure, that was a lever. I felt the cold bead of advantage. I would need help, patience, and secrecy. I began to plan quietly. I cried in my car after that gala, holding the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. The streetlights blurred through my tears. I felt foolish, small, and broken. But after the crying ended, I stared at myself in the rearview mirror. My face looked older than I remembered, but stronger too. I wiped my tears and whispered, "I'm not out of the picture." Saying it felt like stepping onto solid ground again. I took a deep breath and let the anger settle into something calm. Pain was there, yes, but it was no longer wild. It had a shape now. I knew I had lost the man I loved, but I had not lost myself.
Not yet.
I started the car and drove home slowly, thinking of everything he had taken and everything I might take back. At a red light, I whispered again, "You should have left me in peace." But he didn't. And now I wasn't going to either. The next morning, my lawyer sat across from me with a thick folder. "Vivian," she said gently, "he moved every major asset into Clara's name. The house, the rental properties, even your vacation cabin." My heart hammered. "Can he do that?" I asked. She sighed. "It's shady, but possible if he claims they were gifts."
Gifts.
That word felt like another slap. She flipped to a page showing my signature on a loan I didn't remember proving. My breath caught. "This isn't right," I whispered. "No," she said, "it's forgery or close enough to raise flags." I sat back, stunned but steady. For weeks, I thought I had no power. Now I had something sharp in my hand.
"We can use this," she said.
"But you must stay quiet. He can't know you're preparing." I nodded slowly. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt the floor under my feet again. He thought I was done. But the truth was I had only just begun. That evening, my phone buzzed with a message from my old neighbor, Mrs. Porter. "Vivian, dear, you might want to see this." She sent pictures of Clara, smiling wide as she carried boxes into the mansion I had helped design. My fountain, my idea, my memory, sparkled behind her like it had never belonged to me. A photo of Clara posing in my favorite sunroom nearly made me drop my phone. I felt heat rise under my skin. Mrs. Porter added, "They said they're the new owners. She seems very proud." I sat down slowly, staring at the images. The life I built was being lived by someone else. Someone who mocked me. Someone who helped take everything from me. I looked at the photos again, but this time my grief hardened into resolve. If they wanted my home so badly, they were going to learn how quickly a dream house could turn into a trap. Quiet revenge was better than loud rage. And I could be very quiet. A week later, I walked into one of my husband's investor parties. Conversations stopped the moment people recognized me. He stood near the bar holding a drink, wearing the confident grin he used on magazine covers. When he saw me, the grin cracked. I smiled sweetly and said loud enough for the room to hear, "Congratulations on building my dream home." A few investors turned toward him, confused. He stammered something about miscommunication, but I stepped closer. "You always did love using my money to impress people," I said softly. His jaw tightened. Cameras flashed as guests whispered. I could feel the gossip spreading like fire. For years, I had stood beside him as the supportive wife. Now he looked at me like I held a knife.
"Good."
Let him feel the first cut. I walked away without another word. Outside, I breathed deeply. He wanted me gone. He wanted me silent. Instead, I had planted a seed of doubt right in front of his world. He cornered me before I reached my car. "Stay away from my life," he hissed, gripping my arm. I pulled free. "Funny," I said. "You build it with my money." His eyes flashed with fear and anger. He wasn't used to losing control. I stood tall. "You should treat me with respect," I added. "You might need me sooner than you think." His face reddened. "Don't start something you can't finish, Vivian." I stared at him calmly. "Oh, I finish everything." I drove off without looking back, but inside my chest, something new had awakened. That night, I met with my friend who worked in real estate. I asked about investments, nothing more. She lowered her voice and said, "There's a foreclosure auction coming up. Big house. Same street as yours used to be." My breath caught. Which one? She told me, and like a spark in a dark room, the beginning of a plan lit up inside my mind. The next day, I met my friend again and asked more questions. She said the house going to auction was behind on payments and the owners were struggling. My heart beat fast. My husband had bragged he paid in full. But if he lied about that, what else had he lied about? I went home and made tea, trying to calm myself. Later that night, I saw Clara's new video online. She stood in my old kitchen, laughing and calling it our fresh start. She spun in circles, showing off the marble counters I had picked. I sat there for a long time, watching her take victory laps through my memories. But inside, I felt no fear now, only focus. I grabbed my notebook and began listing every detail I remembered from our finances. If he had used my signature on loans, then he had taken a risk that could break him. I underlined one sentence 3 times. Find the missing debt. My revenge was beginning to take shape. I searched through old emails, bank alerts, and messages he forgot to delete. At the bottom of a folder, I found a document marked private. It listed property loans tied to fake collateral, numbers that didn't match anything we owned. My pulse raced. He had taken loans he could not afford, using my name as backup. If the bank discovered this, the house could fall into foreclosure faster than anyone expected. I called my lawyer again and read her the figures. She whistled. Vivian, he's over-leveraged.
Badly.
This is worse than I thought. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed. For years, he made me feel small, as if I needed him to survive. Now I saw the truth. He was the weak one. He built a new life on shaky ground, and Clara lived in a house sitting on cracks. I felt a cold calm fill my chest. I didn't need to destroy him. His own choices would do that for me. A few days later, another message from Mrs. Porter appeared. They added new furniture, she wrote. Looks expensive. Attached were photos of Clara posing again, this time near the fountain I designed. I almost laughed. She had no idea the house she bragged about was sinking under debt. But a new post from Clara stopped me cold. She walked through the halls giving a tour, adding captions like, "Some ex-wives just can't move on." My jaw tightened. She didn't even know me, yet she mocked me. The comments cheered her on. That was when something sharp inside me locked into place. I whispered to myself, "Good. Enjoy it while you can." I didn't warn them about the auction date. I didn't hint. Let them decorate the place. Let them believe it was theirs forever. I shut my laptop slowly, like closing a door. Silence felt powerful. My plan did not need noise. It only needed patience. And I had plenty of that left. My lawyer connected me with a consultant who helped gather bank details quietly. He called one morning and said, "The foreclosure date is set, 45 days.
Perfect.
That gave me just enough time to prepare without raising suspicion. I spent the next week creating an LLC. I named it Eleanor Holdings, after my grandmother, a woman who survived storms without losing her kindness. The paperwork was simple, and no one could trace it back to me. When the final confirmation email arrived, I stared at the words "Entity Approved" and felt something strong rise in my chest. I thought of Clara calling my home her fresh start. I thought of my husband saying I was out of the picture. I smiled. This time, I would step back into the picture, but as someone they never saw coming. Revenge didn't need shouting. It needed structure, planning, and the kind of patience that only older women truly understood. The divorce meeting came next. He sat across from me, wearing a confident smile. "Let's finish this quickly, Vivian," he said. "We both want to move forward." His lawyer slid the papers toward me. I signed each page calmly, though my hands tingled with energy. He thought my quiet meant defeat. In truth, I had already started building the end of his new life. After the meeting, he placed a hand on my shoulder like he was doing me a favor. "It's better this way," he said. I simply nodded. Outside, the sun felt warm on my face. I walked to my car slowly, breathing and steady. The divorce was only a step, not the ending. The real ending would come when he realized he had lost everything he tried to steal. I drove home and circled the auction date in red on my calendar. 45 days. That was all I needed, and I would not waste a single one. I kept silent after the divorce. I didn't post anything, didn't complain, didn't warn a single person. Silence made him careless. He believed I was broken, sitting alone in some dark corner. But I was working. Every day, I checked the foreclosure timeline. I reviewed bank papers at night with a cup of tea and a steady mind. I watched Clara's online life too. She posted videos of the dream home, showing her morning coffee near the fountain I designed. She said she felt blessed. I almost felt sorry for her, but then I remembered her captions mocking bitter ex-wives. Let her brag. Let her smile. She was part of his betrayal, and she would learn what it felt like to lose something she believed was hers. I kept reminding myself not to warn them, not even once. Revenge needed quiet air to grow, and mine was growing strong. One morning, my lawyer called. Vivian, she said, the bank has confirmed the foreclosure schedule. 45 days. No delays expected. I stood at my window, watching sunlight spill over my small garden. 45 days felt like a gift. Is he aware yet? I asked. She chuckled. Not a chance. They won't notify him until the final letters go out.
Perfect.
I could almost picture him smiling somewhere, feeling safe, believing everything was under control. I spent that day gathering the last pieces for my plan. Eleanor Holdings needed a dedicated bank account, a mailing address, and a clean paper trail. By evening, everything was set. I lit a candle for myself, a quiet celebration. He once told me I was too soft, too gentle, too forgiving. He had forgotten older women know how to endure storms. And when the storm clears, we rebuild stronger than before. Creating the secret identity felt strange at first. I sat at my dining table with neat stacks of papers, LLC forms, bank letters, legal notes. Eleanor Holdings now looked real enough to fool anyone, even him. I placed my grandmother's old brooch beside the folder, like a blessing. She had taught me that women do not need to shout to win. We win by thinking, by waiting, by choosing the right moment. I wrote the new business address on an envelope, my old shop address, the one he never cared about. That would be important later. When everything was organized, I leaned back and exhaled. I felt lighter than I had in months. The divorce had ended the marriage, but this new identity would end his comfort. I closed the folder and whispered, let the game begin. Sometimes revenge doesn't roar. Sometimes it hums softly, like a voice only you can hear. When the divorce was finalized, he sent me a short message. Hope there's no hard feelings. I stared at the screen, amazed. Hard feelings? He threw me away like old clothes. He gave my home to another woman. He told people I was out of the picture. Still, I typed a polite reply, keeping my mask on. Wishing you the best. He thought my calm meant I had let go. I hadn't. I simply didn't need him to see the truth yet. That afternoon, I drove past the mansion. The windows glowed. Music played. They were celebrating something, maybe even the divorce. I watched from the street, unnoticed. I wasn't angry anymore. I felt almost peaceful. They had built their life on lies and debt. And I knew exactly when it would all fall apart. I checked my phone one more time. The auction was in just a few days. The auction hall felt cold when I entered. Many bidders sat with their paddles ready, whispering about the luxury home on the list. My heart beat steady under my coat. I sat in the back, hidden. He and Clara arrived late, holding hands, but their faces looked tense. They must have gotten the foreclosure letter. I watched them whisper urgently as the bidding began. The price rose fast. Clara squeezed his arm. He shook his head, sweating. When the number reached its peak, only my silent paddle remained. Sold, the auctioneer called. To Eleanor Holdings. I kept my head down as people clapped. He stood frozen. Clara looked confused. He had no idea the buyer was me. Not yet. As I walked out, my hands felt warm. This was the moment everything turned. If you want more stories like this, hit subscribe for more true revenge stories. For 2 days, the news around town said the house sold to a private investor. My husband celebrated online, telling friends, "We kept our dream house. Smooth deal." I almost laughed. He had no idea the buyer was me. Behind the scenes, my lawyer began the title transfer. Once completed, the law gave them 30 days to leave or pay rent to the new owner. And I knew rent would shake them. I imagined them drinking wine in my old kitchen, thinking they had escaped a disaster. I let them celebrate. It made the next part sweeter. When the official documents arrived for Eleanor Holdings, my hands felt warm holding them. The house he said was his forever home now belonged to me again, without him knowing a thing. I sat back in my chair and smiled to myself. Quiet revenge was starting to move like a slow, steady tide. It would rise higher soon. Much higher. 3 days later, the first envelope went out. A simple white letter addressed to current tenants. My lawyer sent it by certified mail. I pictured Clara opening it, expecting a bill or a welcome note. Inside, she found a short message. "Dear tenants, welcome. Your new landlord appreciates timely payments." Below that was the monthly rent amount, set high on purpose. At the bottom sat a clean, simple signature, Eleanor Holdings. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. Mrs. Porter had seen Clara run outside to show my husband the letter. She said he froze like someone had unplugged his soul. "They looked scared, dear," she told me. I thanked her and sat down slowly. Scared was good. Scared meant cracks were showing. But the best part hadn't happened yet. He would soon know exactly who owned his precious home.
And it wouldn't feel like fear then.
It would feel like falling. He must have spent half the night researching. By morning, he had discovered the address linked to Eleanor Holdings, my old business address.
He knew it well.
I used it for years when he was too busy to notice the details. Mrs. Porter told me he stood in the driveway for almost an hour, holding the letter, his face pale, his hand shaking. Clara kept asking, "What does it mean?" He didn't answer. He knew exactly what it meant. His voice had once told me, "You're out of the picture." But now he understood. I had stepped back in, and I was holding the frame. When my lawyer emailed me saying he had sent a frantic request for an extension on rent, I felt only calm. "Decline it," I wrote back. No anger. No shaking.
Peace.
It was time for him to feel the weight of every choice he made. The official rent demand went out next. The number was high, too high for a man already drowning in secret debt. He called my lawyer 3 times. She ignored him. Then he called me. I let it ring. I wanted him to sit in silence with the truth. Later that day, he sent a short message. "Vivian, we need more time." I read it twice and felt nothing. For years I had begged him to slow down, to listen, to care. He never did. Now he wanted grace. I typed back, "All tenants must follow policy." He didn't reply again. That evening, I sat by my window watching the sky turn pink. The woman I used to be, the one who forgave too much, felt far away. I had become someone stronger. Someone who did not bend for liars. The countdown had begun. The house clocked toward day 30. And I did not plan to stop it. Day 30 arrived crisp and bright. At noon, movers showed up with the sheriff and a stack of court orders. I didn't go myself. I didn't need to. Mrs. Porter filmed everything from her porch. Clara screamed when they carried out her boxes. My husband argued with the officers until one warned him to step back. Neighbors came outside, phones raised. Someone whispered, "Isn't that his new girlfriend?" Another said, "Didn't he call that place his forever home?" The videos spread online fast. By evening, a gossip site titled it, "Man evicted by ex-wife from mistress mansion." The comments roasted him. I watched quietly from my living room, sipping tea. This was the moment revenge truly began, where everything he built on lies fell apart in front of a crowd. And the best part? This was only the beginning. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. Friends sent links to gossip sites. The headlines sat bold on every screen. Ex-wife evicts cheating husband from his love nest. Reporters added details, guessing at the drama. Some said Clara cried on the lawn. Others wrote that he shouted about losing everything. The videos had gone viral overnight. People made jokes, memes, even short clips using his angry face. I watched them all with quiet shock. I had not planned for the world to laugh at him, but life had a way of adding its own flavor to justice. At noon, my husband tried calling again. I didn't answer. He texted, "We need to talk." I placed my phone face down. For years, he controlled the story. Now, the world held it up to the light, and he could not hide. The power he once had over my voice was gone, and I felt lighter because of it. 2 days after the eviction, Clara left him. Mrs. Porter told me she drove off in the middle of the night with 3 suitcases and a trash bag full of clothes. Later, Clara posted a message online calling him a liar who ruined my life. I almost laughed. She had mocked me months before. Now she was tasting the same pain she helped create. A small part of me wondered if she had loved him, but I didn't hold pity for long. She had stepped into my life knowing he was still married. She had worn my house like a crown. Now she was left with nothing but a few bitter posts. He tried messaging me again after she left. "Everything is falling apart," he wrote. "Can we talk?" I didn't respond. He wasn't reaching out because he cared about me. He was reaching out because he finally understood what losing everything felt like. 3 days later, I walked through the empty mansion for the first time. My footsteps echoed. The house felt cold, almost hollow, like it was waiting. The walls still held traces of my old choices, paint colors I picked, fixtures I loved. But now, everything felt different. It was mine again by law and by effort, but it no longer hurt to see it. The pain had drained away, leaving only clarity. I touched the stone of the fountain I designed and felt history settle into place. This house was never meant to be a trophy for betrayal. It was meant to be a home built from something real. I stood in the center of the living room and whispered, "You don't get to break me." The air felt warm around me, like the house agreed. The mansion was empty now, but not for long. It was time to rebuild, not for him, not for Clara, but for women who needed a place to start again. Renovation crews arrived the next week. I walked them through every room, explaining changes. "This wall comes down," I said. "This room becomes a meeting space. The upstairs becomes private rooms." They nodded and took notes. Turning the mansion into a women's recovery and business retreat felt right, like giving purpose to something built on lies. I named it Second Chances. The workers repainted every wall, replacing cold colors with warm ones. They fixed the floors, added new lights, and opened spaces that once felt heavy. Watching the transformation made me feel new too. I imagined women sitting around the fireplace sharing ideas, building dreams, building strength. This house had seen betrayal, cruelty, and arrogance. Now it would see healing. When I looked into the mirror in one of the finished bathrooms, I barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked older, yes, but she also looked powerful. And this time, the power was real. When the retreat opened, the local news came to cover the event. A young reporter asked, "Why rebuild here?" I answered simply, "Because pain creates strong women, and strong women create change." The story aired that night with a headline, "Ex-wife turns husband's love nest into empowerment center." People online cheered. Women sent messages thanking me for the courage I didn't even know I had. Meanwhile, he avoided reporters. Someone sent me a photo of him leaving a store with his hood up, trying to hide his face. Investors were pulling out of his projects. His business was shaking under pressure. He had once called me his quiet little helper. Now my quiet had become the thing that crushed him. As guests arrived for the first workshop, I stood at the door greeting them. The house that once held betrayal now held hope. And I felt, for the first time in months, truly free. His company began to fall apart faster than anyone expected. Investors withdrew their funds, and partners asked questions he couldn't answer. One man even called me, saying, "Vivian, we had no idea he treated you this way." I didn't say much. I didn't need to. The world was connecting the dots on its own. Soon he filed for bankruptcy. The man who once carried himself like a king now had no throne, no army, and no castle. I heard he moved into a small apartment on the edge of town. He had spent years calling me old-fashioned, saying I lacked ambition. Yet here he was starting from zero, while I had built something strong and kind. Sometimes I sat on the retreat's balcony and wondered if he understood the worst part. I didn't destroy him. He destroyed himself. I just stepped aside and let his own choices fall. It was strange how peaceful justice could feel. When tax season came, he had to take odd jobs to cover his debts. A neighbor told me she saw him delivering packages late at night. Another saw him cleaning patios for cash. I didn't laugh. Life had a rough way of teaching lessons. Still, the irony didn't escape me. Part of his paycheck now helped pay property taxes on the mansion I owned, the same mansion he once bragged about. That thought made me smile. I didn't chase him and I didn't mock him. I let karma do its quiet work. At the retreat, more women moved in for our programs. They shared stories of loss, fear, and rebuilding. I listened, helped, and guided them with calm hands. They didn't know the whole truth about the house's past. They didn't need to. All they needed to know was that they were safe here. And that safety was something I had earned. One afternoon, he came to the retreat. I saw him standing near the gate, thinner than before, holding his hat in his hands. He looked up at me with tired eyes. "Vivian, please. I need forgiveness." The women inside paused, watching from the windows. I stepped outside slowly. He started talking fast, about mistakes, stress, Clara leaving, his business falling apart. He tried to explain the cheating, the lies, the forged papers, as if explaining could undo the damage. When he finished, I didn't yell or cry. I simply handed him a flyer from our welcome table. "We host men's accountability sessions on Thursdays," I said. "If you want help changing, start there." His eyes filled with shame. He expected softness, the old Vivian who excused everything. But she was gone. He left without another word. I walked back inside feeling strong, steady, unshaken. Forgiveness wasn't owed. Healing was mine. A month later, Clara tried to sue me. She claimed emotional distress, saying I had targeted her. My lawyer laughed so hard she nearly dropped the file. The case collapsed within days. Documents surfaced showing Clara had signed false statements for my husband, proof she helped move assets illegally. The judge dismissed her claim before it even reached a hearing. When the decision came through, I sat in my office and let out a slow breath. Clara had played her part in hurting me, but she was just another person caught in his lies. The law didn't punish her hard, but it didn't reward her either. She disappeared from the public eye after that. People forgot her name. Meanwhile, second chances grew. More women came seeking help, and word spread of our calm rooms, warm lights, and patient hearts. The house that once held betrayal now held purpose. That was the sweetest win of all. A popular podcast invited me for an interview. The host asked gently, "Vivian, what made you rebuild instead of walk away?" I smiled into the microphone. Because leaving would have meant he defined the ending. I chose to write my own. We talked about strength, quiet revenge, and healing. At the end, she asked for one message for women listening. I said, "Sometimes the best way to move on is to move in." The clip went viral. Women sent messages from everywhere, Texas, London, South Africa, telling me they felt seen. The podcast titled the episode, "The Art of Silent Revenge." I didn't mind. Revenge wasn't the heart of my story, but it was the spark that lit the path. The real win was finding myself again. When I left the studio, the air felt warm and full of promise. My story wasn't about him anymore.
It was about me.
His downfall grew worse as months passed. One evening, a staff member told me, "Vivian, he's outside." I stepped onto the balcony of the retreat and looked down. There he was, drunk, shouting at the gate, yelling that I stole everything from him. The police arrived soon after. They spoke to him, calm but firm, and led him away. I watched with a strange mix of sadness and certainty. This wasn't the strong man I once knew. This was someone lost in the mess he created with his own hands. People online reacted quickly when videos appeared. Some felt pity, but most said his fall was well-earned.
I didn't comment.
I simply stood on the balcony until the police car drove out of sight. The wind brushed my hair gently, like the world reminding me I had made it through. His story no longer shaped me. I had my own path, my own purpose, my own peace. Months later, we hosted our first big charity event at Second Chances. Women arrived dressed in colors of hope, soft yellows, bright blues, warm reds. Music played lightly in the background. People shared stories of healing, rebuilding, and learning to trust again. When I stepped up to speak, the room grew quiet. "Thank you for being here," I said. "This house was once a symbol of pain. Now, it is a place where strength grows." Guests raised their glasses to "turning pain into power," a phrase one volunteer started that everyone loved. I walked through the halls afterward, watching people laugh near the fountain. For the first time, the fountain didn't hurt to look at. It felt like it finally belonged to someone worthy. The retreat had become more than a place. It was a message. We are never too old to rise again. And sometimes, rebuilding your life is the best revenge of all. One evening, my phone rang. His name lit the screen. I considered ignoring it, but something told me to answer. His voice was tired, small, almost broken. "Vivian, you win." I sat down slowly.
"This isn't a game," I said.
There was a long silence before he whispered, "I never thought you'd fight back." I closed my eyes. "I didn't fight," I said softly. "I just stopped losing."
He didn't reply.
I could hear him breathing, shaky and worn. For a moment, I felt the ghost of our old life. Then it faded like smoke. "Take care of yourself," I said. Then I ended the call. I stared at the phone in my lap and breathed out. That was the last piece of him I needed to release. Finally, the story between us had closed. Not with anger, not with shouting, just with truth. I stood on the balcony of the mansion, my mansion, watching the sunset paint the sky gold and orange. It reminded me of the day I first saw the listing with Clara's name on it. That day, I felt like my world had cracked. Now, the crack had become an opening, a doorway into a new life I never expected. Workers' laughter drifted from the garden where they were finishing a new path. Inside, the rooms glowed with warm lights and calm voices. Every corner felt like a victory carved from heartbreak. I wrapped my cardigan around my shoulders and let myself breathe. I thought of the woman I had been before betrayal crushed me. I thought of the woman I had become. Stronger.
Clearer. Free.
This house was mine again, not as a memory of pain, but as a home for hope. I whispered, "Full circle," and smiled at the quiet beauty of it. The retreat welcomed new women the next day, carrying bags and nervous smiles. I showed them to their rooms, warm and cozy, each one meant to feel safe. When we reached the master bedroom, I locked the door gently. That room would never be used again. It held the last shadows of the life he stole. Now it held only a plaque. I hung it on the door myself, out of the picture, but still in control. I stepped back and admired it. It wasn't anger anymore, it was truth. I walked down the hall as sunlight spilled over the floors. Laughter rose from downstairs where the new guests were gathering. The house, once dark with betrayal, now glowed with new beginnings. I paused at the stairs, looking back one last time. Revenge wasn't the real end. Peace was. And as I walked into the bright room below, I carried only that. Please follow for more great stories. Thank you for watching.